What is up guys, JayzTwoCents here, and I am doing my very first review of 2016. I'm enjoying the experimental type videos, but of course we're still gonna be doing some product reviews because one of the points of this channel is obviously to try and educate you on some products before you spend a lot of money building a PC or a graphics card or whatever. Hopefully you guys can make the right decision based on the information I'm going to give you. But today we're gonna be taking a look at Gigabyte's new GTX980ti Xtreme Waterforce Edition graphics card. Is it too little, too late? I don't know, let's find out. Once again, I want to give a huge thank you for today's sponsor, lynda.com/Jay. As I said before, I like to learn things, you should like to learn things too, and there's nothing more fun than learning things you care about at the pace you want to learn them. I've never been the kind of guy who does the best in a classroom setting, so I like to learn things that I want to learn about when I want to learn about them, and that's what's great about lynda.com. They've got new classes that are added each and every week, thousands of online tutorials about subject matter that matters to you. Get a free trial membership and start learning something new today. But in the description of this video, you will find a link. It's how they know that I sent you. It's lynda.com/Jay, lynda.com/Jay. So head on over there right now and learn something new. Fill your brains with knowledge. Other than some of the other useless junk we fill our brains with, put something important in there. Well, here it is right here, and obviously, as you can tell, this is a single card with a single radiator, something that I said from the very beginning Gigabyte should have done. And I know you guys are sick of seeing this clip, but I'm going to play it again. But I do think Gigabyte is actually onto something here because I think they just missed the mark. What they should have done was simply offer a single 980 120mm radiator with much shorter tubing and let the buyer mount it in a standard 120mm fan slot in their case, just like the 295X2, and look how successful that card is. But I think if Gigabyte relaunched the Waterforce as a single card solution, the buzz about it would have been much more positive. Now in the box, obviously you get the graphics card and the attached water cooling radiator, and even a, it's like a wristband. It's kind of neat. It's a little, like a gym wristband. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get really sweaty when I game. But just taking a quick tour around the unit, you can see it does have a backplate. It's a standard length unit. It's no longer than the actual length of the PCB, which is nice because they're air-cooled cards, as you guys know, adds extra length, which makes some compatibility issues with small form factor cases or even some mid-towers. Although not usually an issue these days, it is something to keep in mind. You've got a window right here on the front of the card, as you can see, so you can see your pump and stuff, but most of the time it's oriented like this, and then you'll have the radiator, you know, kind of going up to maybe the back of the case or, you know, something like that. There, probably something like that. There we go. So you're not going to really see it. It does have an illuminated Gigabyte logo right here on the side, which is nice. It has RGB features. The side of the window also lights up and has RGB. As you guys know, 2016 and CES was like the year of RGB. So that's kind of nice to see, I guess, but you can illuminate that and make colors that you want. You got your standard I/O, you've got your DVI on there, your 3 display ports, and your HDMI. When it comes to specs, though, it does require 2 8-pin PCI Express power cables, and then it has 1 6-pin auxiliary coming out the back. So that's kind of weird how instead of utilizing some space on the PCB here and putting all 3 of them together, you would have to have 2 coming out the top and 1 coming out the back, which could be aesthetically a little displeasing. You do also have right here, though, the Extreme button on the back, which is how you can switch between the different BIOS that are on here. And then, of course, you've got your 2 SLI fingers on the top because this is 4-way SLI compatible. Now, the base clock on this thing is 1000 megahertz, obviously, but it's going to push the overclocks farther to 1216 megahertz plus. And that's going to be based on cooling. So obviously with the water cooler on here and GPU Boost 2.0 is going to want to take full advantage of the lower thermals and push the overclock farther. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see something up in the 13 or 1400 megahertz range without us even touching a program like GPU Guru that comes with this, or MSI Afterburner, or whatever overclocking utility you like to use. The RAM clock is sitting at 1800 megahertz, or technically 1801 megahertz, giving you 7204 megahertz effective RAM speed on this. So that's about 200 megahertz higher than reference as well. So obviously this thing is pushing higher clocks all around. And when it comes to the RGB features, one thing to keep in mind is that it only works with their own proprietary software, the GPU Guru app. So if you want to do RGB control on this, MSI Afterburner or EVGA Precision is not going to give you control over that, which is kind of unfortunate because I do not like the Guru software whatsoever. I obviously have my alternatives that I prefer over that. So if you want to control the RGB, unfortunately, you have to use their software. All right, so that's enough yammering on about the specs and blah, blah, blah. Let's go ahead and see how this thing performs, and we'll do some final thoughts, some subjective and objective opinions on this card, because after all, this was one of the first attempts at water cooling this card with the modern series cards. Obviously, I believe Zotac did it back in the 500 series, but we've come a long way since then. So let's see where we are today and whether or not this is one that you guys should even consider spending your money on.
Transition.
Fuck. When it rains, it pours, I tell ya. So one of the problems with having an open test bench like I have here, I think I just dropped a cable behind the desk. The fan is pretty exposed, and I had it all set up. I was booting up the system, and unfortunately, I broke a fan blade off. As you guys can sort of see, hopefully this is very stiff tubing. You guys can sort of see right there, I broke a fan blade off with my finger, which is why I now have a Band-Aid on, because these are very sharp blades, and holy hell did it literally slice the absolute crap out of my finger. That's a first. I've never done that before. So as you guys know, when mistakes happen, I like to leave them in. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to now replace this fan, which got me to thinking, this might be a perfect opportunity to see exactly how you could change a fan on this if you wanted to. So I guess let's go ahead and do that. My finger really hurts. The edge of that fan just dug in, and then bam, and then the blade broke off and went flying somewhere. I still haven't found it, but blood literally went out of my finger. Be careful, guys. Seriously. I have never cut myself on a fan before. Something bit me. So I figure this is actually a perfect opportunity to do this, considering so many people have asked me if you can change the fan on these units, because this one, as you guys can see here, just like on the other radiators we've taken a look at on these all-in-one cards like this, I call them all-in-one card because it's all-in-one unit on a card, is they are wired into here, not into the motherboard or something. So if you did damage your fan like this, I guess this is a good example of what you would have to go through. There's just a few perimeter screws, there's 2 on the bottom, maybe 2 on the top. That appears to be it. Now, just as I feared, on the inside of this, and there's fingerprints all over it, so now I have the fingerprints of whoever installed this thing. So just as I feared, it is not using a standard fan plug, if you will. As you can see, this is very different. Yeah, so that powers, it appears, the pump and the fan. So unfortunately, the only way you can get this fan off is you pretty much have to cut the thing. That's unfortunate. So they never anticipated this fan ever having to be switched. Right, so obviously I can't change the fan out on that without having to cut it out because it's literally wired into the pump. The pump also shares the same harness that comes with the fan. Now this is pretty much the identical fan right here, and this, as you can see, is on the Devil card, the Devil water-cooled card from Power Color, which is clearly a 390X, not a 980 Ti. But it looks like they've sourced the same fan, only they have gone with a standard 3-pin solution. So if Gigabyte had done something like this, then that would have clearly solved the issue where you could have just unbolted the fan, kind of coiled up the cable, zip tied it, and then just plugged it in and been up and running. So obviously if the fan gets damaged with the MSI unit, you're stuck with having to go through an RMA. Whereas if they had just gone with a unit like this, or a function like this where the 3-pin just plugs into the card, like so, then it would have solved our issue. So what I'm gonna have to do for the sake of this video now is I'm gonna have to plug another fan into here. I'm gonna cut this fan out. I'll probably rewire it myself later. And then we are going to just move forward with using a different fan, which is going to skew some of the cooling slightly, but I don't think it's gonna be that much different overall, because what I care most about on this obviously is performance, and cooling is, well, I mean, it kind of sucks. I'm sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place here. Fortunately, my finger took the brunt of it. Oh well, let's move forward. Okay, so I got the new fan installed, and just to kind of show you guys what I did here, as you can see, I literally just cut the fan cable and then pulled it out of the cooler. And the fan that I used here is actually just an EK fan, but it's not the Vardar. I didn't want to give any sort of cooling advantage by changing the fan. So I actually chose a fan, as you guys can see, that is very similar in design. It's not glossy, but it's got very similar fan blades, same number of fan blades, and it's also a lower RPM fan. This is a 1600 RPM fan versus, I don't actually know how fast this one is. Does it even say on here? Doesn't even say. It just says model number. It's a Power Logic fan, and the does not say the RPM on here. So anyway, it does say it's a 2-ball bearing fan though. Anyway, let's go ahead and plug this thing again. Hopefully I don't cut my finger off this time and we can get some actual numbers. Well, I've had a lot of time to spend with this card now, actually. The first part of this video that you saw was done quite a while ago. But anyway, I'm very disappointed that I broke the fan, but these things happen, I guess. But at least to give you guys a pretty good idea of what to expect if you did something similar and you needed to change out the fan. I'm kind of disappointed that doesn't have a standard plug like all the other water coolers that I tested did, where you could have literally just plugged another fan into a 3-pin fan and then been up and running. So that's a little bit unfortunate. But in terms of performance, it really didn't surprise me, meaning the 980 Ti I feel like has really been tapped, where these companies and the custom aftermarket air cooling and the water cooling, and we've already talked about water cooling doesn't really increase your max overclocks, it really just gives you the best temperature for your max overclocks. So it really performed where I thought it would. It was matching the Titan X in quite a few tests. This is a custom PCB, not a reference PCB as, say, the 980 Ti hybrid. So that's a little bit of a plus. This thing overclocked really, really good out of the box. It went straight to 1417, just like I thought it might. And I think the only card that overclocked farther out of the box was the Kingpin from EVGA. But this thing actually achieved 1522 on the core, which seems to be pretty much the norm. All of my 980 Ti's I've ever had come through here all sat right around 1520 before they started failing in their overclock testing, regardless of what the voltage was. This one gives you plus 87 on the voltage and 130% additional, technically an extra 30% power target above 100. So 130%, which is higher than some other cards. Now the only time I think you'd see the true full potential of this card is if you went something above and beyond the water cooling and then went with something like exotic cooling of some sort. But if you did do a custom BIOS on this thing, then you could technically push the voltage even farther. But the additional power target is nice, which probably is why it overclocked all the way to 1417 automatically. Of course, I wanted to see how far this card would go, and given this card being what it is, I don't know why you're even given the option of going to extreme mode. You should just do it all the time anyway. Just let it go there by itself. Now, one thing you might notice compared to other hybrid coolers we've looked at here is this one has no fan on it to offer additional cooling to the PCB. But unlike the other options, this is the only one that comes with a full cover block built onto it. Although it be transfer of heat pipe, it still is giving you full contact cooling for the VRMs, the RAM, as well as the GPU. So this is going to give you the best total cooling for an all-in-one cooling unit. Unfortunately, they chose to use a very short and terrible option of FEP tubing. FEP tubing doesn't look good. In fact, this is the only cooler I had that I've tested on this test bench where the 120 radiator did not have enough tubing to meet the front of the case where I had been mounting them to do my hybrid testing. So keep that in mind. The tubing is a little short. And one of the things that really stinks about FEP tubing is it's very stiff, and no matter how you twist it and bend it, it kind of wants to do its own thing and just sort of like flop around on itself. The rubber tubing options that you find on pretty much all of the other custom cooling units are definitely more desirable than that. The last thing is I feel like the cooler and the shroud are kind of cheap looking. I mean, the shroud is just plastic, as I showed you guys when I took it apart. It's just a flimsy plastic with a big giant window with a case sticker literally stuck in the front of it. And I think that Gigabyte could have done a much better job with the aesthetic. Now the RGB colors are red by default, and obviously you can change that through GPU Guru, like I said. I didn't mess with any of that, it didn't matter to me, but you guys can change the colors through Guru, like I said. So there you go, guys, that is the Gigabyte 980 Ti Xtreme Waterforce. Is this too little little too late. This was something I said 13 months ago they needed to do, almost 14 months ago. Unfortunately, everyone else beat them to that single 120 unit cooling for the top-end GPUs when they were kind of the first ones to revise that idea with the three-way Waterforce, which, as you guys saw, I didn't really enjoy or appreciate. Now, of course, other cooling companies in the past, like Zotac, have done all-in-one water cooling units on, like, say, the 580, but then that was dropped through the 600 series and the 700 series and brought back late into the 900 series. So it's nice to see again, because we're able to really utilize things like the efficient Maxwell architecture, getting great performance at very low temperatures. This thing maxed out at 47 degrees C, which is pretty much exactly what Skunkworks graphics cards are doing with the same overclocks, as well as being on that giant massive loop. So you can see that the radiators are more than enough, a single 120, to keep these guys cool. But you tell me, is this too late? Do you guys like this design? Tell me in the comments or tell me on Twitter. Anyway guys, time to go. Thanks for watching my review of the GIGABYTE 980ti Xtreme Waterforce. Tell me what you think. As always guys, thanks for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. And you're gonna have to bear with me here. I'm gonna probably be moving here in the very near future, so it's gonna be very hectic, and I'm gonna do the best I can to keep my schedule alive. I'm gonna do also the best I can to get things pre-uploaded far into the future so that it's kind of seamless, but it's gonna be a crazy next few weeks. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.